This story began in the small town of Kamenigorod, with a dispute between 5 guards over the whereabouts of a certain young man. They believe he wasted his time studying martial arts and recall how he was struck by lightning at the age of 6 and how he constantly runs into the forest to the stone slab. Then the deputy captain of the estate guards, Du, appears and demands that his subordinates stop gossiping. They stand at attention and address him by his rank. He tells them that the boy is still a young master of the family and their lord, even though he is not well liked by the family and behaves strangely. After that, he approaches one of them and bets 5 coins that the guy is still near the stone slab, and the guards rub their hands together. At this time, in the vicinity of Stone Mountain, Du Xiaofu thinks that he will have to return again without success, and that they will continue to mock him. He remembers how 10 years ago, after being struck by lightning, he found the stone slab but has still not been able to unravel the powerful techniques hidden within it. He also remembers that at the moment of the strike, a rune was imprinted in his mind, connecting him to the slab, and that the cracks in the stone are related to the restoration of the battle impulse. Suddenly, leaden clouds began to cover the sky, the sun began to descend, and numerous cracks appeared on the stone slab, from which runes began to emerge. Du Xiaofu stood with his fists clenched and his arms raised among these fragments, scattered in a jumble with the runes. His hair fluttered, and his eyes were filled with surprise and admiration. He rejoiced that after 10 years he had finally mastered his first technique. However, the young man could not understand why the slab had cracked, and decided that there must be something else hidden in it besides this technique. He lifted one of the stones to check, but found nothing underneath it. Then another one. But unfortunately, there was nothing under it either. He even looked under the small stones, but he couldn't find anything there either. The guy sat down on a large stone and told himself that he should forget about all this and that there was no second piece of equipment here. After sitting for a while, he slowly got up, dusted off his cloak, and realized it was time to think about how to get rid of the debris that had appeared due to the split in the slab. At this time, the Du family estate announced that it was recruiting guards with a salary of 10 coins and the opportunity to learn the Du family's martial arts if they were accepted. And if anyone wants to become a guard, they will first have to fight and defeat Du Yu and Du Lei. The candidates for the position of guards come out to fight the truly strong young masters of the Du family. Du Yu pins one down before he has time to react. During this time, Du Lei manages to fight 2 opponents and defeat them, and even though they are still in the Heavenly Kingdom, they are clearly much stronger than ordinary people. The deputy captain says they were born with a 5th level combat pulse, are now at the 6th level of the Heavenly Realm, and will soon reach the realm of the universe. Returning to the estate, Du Xiaofu wonders whether there really are many flaws in the Du family's techniques, or whether it just seems that way to him. Then he realizes that this is indeed the case, and he understands and even sees through the skills of the Du family master and decides that it is all thanks to the technique from the plate. At this time, a bully comes to the estate and asks how true it is that if he can defeat the masters, he will be made the chief of the guards. The deputy thinks that the big guy is familiar with martial arts, but considering the combat pulse and the layer of the Heavenly Kingdom, he can only defeat them by a miracle. He tells the strongman that ambition alone is not enough to win the position of captain. The man asks if these words mean a refusal of the promise and says that he will not renounce his words and is ready to fight. The deputy asks which of the young masters the man wants to fight, Du Yu or Du Lei. The man raises his hand and points to another young master of the Du family. He is confident that he has the strength to defeat him and says that he wants to fight Master Du Xiaofu. Du Xiaofu returns to the estate and, after making his statement, hears people saying that he is pathetic and that the Du family cannot win because of him and what he is doing here in the first place. The bully asks if he is the youngest master of the Du family. The deputy says that he is, and that he is the young master Du Xiaofu, while thinking how this loser dared to come here and disgrace their family. The big guy rejoices that he will fight the young master of the Du family today and dreams that he will be able to defeat him and become the commander of the guards. Du Xiaofu asks the man if he is really sure he wants to challenge him to a fight. The man replies that he is sure, but if the young man does not dare to fight him, his family can hire the man as the commander of the guards without a fight. But the boy replies that if the man is sure and even insists, then let it be as he wishes. A moment later, the guy jumps so high that he is above the house and hears enthusiastic cheers about how high he jumped. Du Yu and Du Lei are also very surprised, and the guy tells the girl that the reason for this is the spiritual energy that Du Xiaofu has developed so much. Everyone around just stands and watches as stones fly in different directions. After that, the guy lands on the ground covered with stones, kneels on one knee, and bows his head. He asks the man if he is sure he wants to fight him. The man is extremely surprised by what he sees and says that this simply cannot be. He was sure that the guy was a pathetic piece of trash and would be easy to defeat, and he tells the guy so. The big guy is completely unprepared for this turn of events and stands there glaring at the young man. Du Xiaofu winks at him in response and asks what he is waiting for and why he is not attacking him. The man says that this is simply impossible and that it must be an optical illusion, and lunges at the guy with his fists. He attacks him in a rage and calls the guy trash. Du Xiaofu stands completely calmly, with his hands behind his back, and suddenly utters the word split. At that moment, lightning flashes, and the ground beneath their feet splits, sending rocks flying in all directions. The man was clearly not prepared for such a turn of events, and, unable to resist, falls into the crack that has formed. The guy didn't even move from his spot, sending the bearded man flying. Is this guy really a master who doesn't know any martial arts? Du Xiaofu thinks that this mysterious technique has restored his combat pulse to the second level, and his spiritual energy has surpassed the level of his combat pulse. He says goodbye to everyone, raises his hand, and says that he is leaving and that they should continue without him. The deputy wondered if this was the same pathetic young master Du Xiaofu. At this time, in the Du estate, a man argues that even such a useless person could live in the main courtyard thanks to his father's status. Du Xiaofu comes to him, calls the man father, and tells him that he will now also be able to master martial arts. The man sees that his son has returned and says that if he is hungry, he can find something to eat in the kitchen. Standing next to his father, the boy sniffs and smells alcohol on his breath. The boy becomes angry and yells, asking his father if he has been drinking. The father brings a jug to his mouth and advises his son that since he can now practice martial arts, he should not distract him but go to the secret pavilion and look for new techniques. Then he realizes that the jug is empty and laments that there is nothing left. After that, he turns around and leaves, saying that he needs to buy more alcohol. The boy remembers that according to his uncle's stories, his father was famous in his time as an excellent martial arts master. However, in Du Xiaofu's memory, his father was always the way he is now, and he believes that this may be related to his mother, whom he has never seen. The guy decides to train more and achieve success, thereby supporting his father, and to start with a mysterious technique instead of going to the mysterious pavilion. He is confident that this technique will help develop spiritual energy and that it is powerful, even though it is the only one, but he can use it in different ways. He feels that he can handle the masters of the heavenly kingdom on the 8th or 9th layer, and that the technique in the new kingdom will become completely invincible. And since he does not yet know what his next technique will be, he decides to practice this technique to ascend to the new realm. He begins training, and after a few minutes, lightning appears, from which a lion emerges. Du Xiaofu sees its appearance, and how fragments begin to break off the rock and fall down, and shouts, "Come on, Thunder Demon Lion!" The fiery lion becomes huge and roars loudly, baring its enormous fangs. The boy is shocked by what he has managed to create and stands watching it with his mouth open. The next moment, lightning strikes the boy standing on the edge of the cliff. After the discharge passes through his body, the boy falls to the ground. He lies there, and in his sad blue eyes he sees the silhouette of a woman he knows, but he cannot see who she is. Then he sees a woman leaning over him, sitting down next to him, and taking his hand in hers. After that, Du Xiaofu wakes up and looks around in confusion. He tries to understand why he dreamed about his childhood, and why he woke up again in a stone coffin in the Du family's ancestral hall. The guy remembers that this has been happening to him several times a month for the past 10 years. Now he is used to it, but he was very frightened when it happened to him for the first time. When he stands up, lightning appears under his feet, and he wonders who could be secretly transporting him to this coffin. Realizing that there was lightning under his feet, he decides that the coffin helps cleanse his bones and nerves and increase his spiritual power. Going outside and realizing that he had slept through the whole day and night, Du Xiaofu decides to hurry up and go to the secret martial arts pavilion to find a new technique. Entering the pavilion, the guy saw many ants, one of which was pierced by a sword. There, the guy meets a man who practices the art of sword fighting and who offers the guy to destroy 10,000 ants. But the guy didn't really like the idea of killing ants for the sake of sword skills. He told the man to forget about it, and that he would rather go look for writings on restoring energy. Suddenly, he was stopped by a man who shouted that even members of the Du family were not allowed to enter the pavilion without permission, and that he had been guarding the pavilion for a long time. The man was extremely indignant at the young man's disregard for the rules and his appearance in the pavilion. In response to Du Xiaofu's indignation, he just stood silently and smiled. Suddenly, he rushed towards the man and declared that he should be addressed as older brother, or else the man would be in trouble, which the man immediately hastened to do. A second later, the man was lying on the stone floor. Du Xiaofu calmly and slowly brushed the dust off his gloves. Lying on the floor, the man said that if he had known the guy was just pretending to be stupid, he wouldn't even have argued with him. Du Xiaofu replied that he would not make the young man look bad in front of others as long as he behaved himself. Then he went to the storage room with the scrolls, in one of which he found information about martial arts techniques and energy restoration writing. In another scroll, he found information about categories of combat techniques, and decided that only universe-level techniques would be useful to him. In yet another scroll, the guy discovered a technique for delivering a wave strike, but he still hadn't found the energy restoration scripture and didn't know where to look for it. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to a guy who turned around and saw the silhouette of a stranger in the window. Du Xiaofu was very surprised by this because it was already night, and he thought that no one else could be here except him, so he asked who was there. Then he saw a man in a black suit with a mask on his head sitting on the window, and in a moment the man in black was about to jump down. Du Xiaofu stood holding the scrolls he had been studying before the guest appeared, watching as the stranger jumped. The stranger was dressed entirely in black, his face was covered with a mask, and only his hands and feet were wrapped in white cloth. Du Xiaofu began to jump up and down, thinking about how fast this unknown warrior was. He felt the technique he had acquired begin to activate. Fiery whirlwinds mixed with runes began to swirl around his right arm from bottom to top. He felt the energy of the new technique rising through his body and prepared to attack. He put his left hand forward and prepared to strike with his right hand, which was ablaze with fire and runes. Meanwhile, the stranger was preparing to land on the floor on his hands. At that very moment, Du Xiaofu threw his right hand forward with a loud ha sound. However, this did not stop the stranger, who deftly landed on his hands. He then jumped back over the guy's head. Then he landed just as deftly on the floor to the left of Du Xiaofu. A second later, the man in black was sitting on the windowsill. He turned around and, without changing position, looked at the guy over his right shoulder. The next moment, there was no trace of his presence on the windowsill. Instead, the room filled with white smoke, which began to creep up on both sides of the cabinets where the scrolls were stored. On top of the cabinet, there was also a golden statuette and a large white fang with gold trim. The guy was surprised when the smoke began to creep up to these objects on the cabinet. A few moments later, the statuette and the fang moved to the edge of the cabinet and flew down. Their flight was short-lived because the stranger in black was waiting for just that, and they fell right into his hands. Du Xiaofu, watching all this, grabbed the amulet hanging around his neck. He was afraid that the guest would want to take it too, and then he shouted at his brother Bai to catch the thief as fast as he could. He himself, in order to prevent him from escaping, also rushed to catch up with the thief, who was running away at full speed. However, when he ran to the entrance, he did not find his brother there. Du Xiaofu decided that his brother was afraid that he would find the energy restoration scripture and might attack him suddenly. He was absolutely sure that the scoundrel Bai had done this to him. The guy decides to look for a quiet place where he can study the wave strike. Finding such a quiet place, he unfolded the scroll, sat in the lotus position, folded his hands at chest level, and suddenly began to feel powerful vibrations. Then he put his thumb and little finger together and raised his index and middle fingers, and the pillar of fire took the form of a huge arrow. A few moments later, a powerful stream of energy struck the scroll lying on the floor in the area where it was written about the levels of studying the wave strike. The guy read on that each new level doubles the power of the wave fist, and even the first level is enough to break bones. Then he began to train with a rock, having read that a single wave punch consists of 9 waves, each wave stronger than the previous one and more difficult to achieve. He stretched out his left arm and sent a wave punch straight at the rock in front of him. After doing this, he decided that compared to the mysterious first technique, learning the wave punch was much easier. Seeing the hole made by his blow in the rock, Du Xiaofu thought that the wave strike had its weaknesses and flaws. despite being very powerful. While he was training, other young masters of the Du family arrived and were surprised to see that, in their opinion, the fool Du Xiaofu was actually practicing. With them was the daughter of the ruler of Stone City, Ye Zichen, who, looking at Master Hao, asked why she had not seen the young man before if he was from the Du family. Du Hao, the eldest grandson of the Du family, replied that the boy's name was Du Xiaofu and that he was just a fool, and that his father was a useless drunkard. The girl did not believe his words and asked in surprise, "He's a fool?" Du Hao's servant began to chase the young man away, saying that his presence might upset their honored guest, Ye Zichen. The young man recalled with sadness that it was Du Hao who had constantly stolen his medicinal pills, and now his servant Du Gui was also giving him orders. Du Gui raised his hand to strike him, shouted at the young man that he wasn't listening to him and to get lost, and even called him a fool. Du Xiaofu managed to grab his hand and reminded him that he was his older cousin, and that in their family they respected seniority, dividing the older and younger members. He added that if the young man could not treat him with the proper respect, then Du Xiaofu would be forced to teach him a lesson. Du Hao intervened in their argument and complained to the young man that he had raised his hand against his man. Du Xiaofu replied to his cousin that he had merely reminded him of their family rule, which was to respect one's elders. Then his cousin reminded him that he was older than the guy, and that he would also teach him a lesson today, to which he replied that it was not his place to teach Du Xiaofu. The guys were already ready to jump at each other with their fists and start fighting when they heard the girl say that it was ugly. She demanded that the master stop immediately because she was not interested in their personal disputes. Du Hao was the first to back down and said that he agreed with Ms. Ye and that they couldn't let such a fool ruin their mood. The girl reminded him that the Du family was holding a competition in a few days, and they could compete and fight for the grand prize. The masters began to discuss the generosity of the family, and that the first prize promised was the blood of a Thunder Rock wolf, and the second and third prizes were foundation pills. Only Du Xiaofu asked in surprise about the blood of the Thunder Rock wolf, but no one answered him. Only Du Hao said that they had agreed, and that at the family competition, he would teach the boy the promised lesson. But the guy replied that he wasn't sure he would participate in these competitions. Then Du Hao promised to tell everyone that the guy was afraid to fight him if he didn't show up. Du Xiaofu was angry with his cousin for saying that if he refused, he would lose face in Stone City. The girl reminded Du Hao that by becoming the winner and obtaining the blood of the Thunder Rock wolf, he would be able to develop the Thunder Rock skill, and she was sure he would win. In response, the master assured her that he would definitely win the grand prize and invited her to watch him compete. After that, Du Hao offered to walk the girl home, and they left laughing, leaving Du Xiaofu alone. Left alone, the guy thought that in order to obtain the blood of the Thunder Rock wolf, he did not necessarily have to participate in the competition. He also thought about Ye Zichen, that she was actually different inside and had to be that way because of her connections and her father's high position. He remembered how, as a child, she apologized for not helping him when his pills were stolen. At the time, he told her that she was not to blame for his weakness, and that he would definitely get everything back when he became stronger. But she reminded him that as the daughter of the city's leader, she would be forced to marry and Du Xiaofu would not be able to practice martial arts. And then, as a very young boy, upon hearing this, he promised to change his destiny. The girl was very upset by his words, and calling him a fool, burst into tears. Unfolding the papyrus, the boy remembered how she used to climb mountains and how they were friends, and now she pretended not to recognize him so that he wouldn't get into trouble. Du Xiaofu decided that he should train more and start by learning the furious wave fist technique. He did not show up for the competition, and Du Hao won, with everyone congratulating him, wishing him to build a strong state and become a genius of the natural arts. After the competition, everyone discussed how Du Xiaofu had not come, and that even though he had begun cultivation, he still would not have been able to defeat his cousin. Du Hao replied that his cousin would come to the pill distribution, and that if he was hiding today, he would have to show up there. Then one of the young masters would suggest beating the guy up in the hope that after that, the guy would give up the pills himself and they wouldn't have to take them. After this conversation, the young masters gathered to leave with laughter, but they did not see that Ye Zichen was watching them. And when the maid asked what she thought of the strength of the younger generation of the Du family, the girl called them mediocre compared to the supreme families. When the young masters, led by Du Hao, were returning home, Du Xiaofu blocked their way. He greeted them with a smile and his arms folded across his chest and said that this was robbery. They began to protest and say that perhaps they had heard wrong because they themselves had gathered to rob him and he could not cope with the best. The guy told them to watch what was happening and use the furious wave fist technique. He raised his fist, jumped up, and then slammed his fist into the ground. Everyone standing nearby couldn't stay on their feet and fell to the ground. The guy walked over to his cousin lying on the ground and said that their whole top three was complete nonsense. He added that he would now pay them back in kind for all their humiliation. After all, if they considered him trash, then they themselves were much worse than trash. And if they considered him a fool, then they were even bigger fools than he was. He also said that now they had to help him spread his name everywhere. He ended his tirade by saying that starting today, he was no longer trash. Lying on the ground, Du Hao could not understand what had just happened to them and how such a thing was even possible. Du Xiaofu took the bottle of Thunder Rock wolf blood and 2 boxes of foundation pills from him. His cousin, still lying on the ground, shouted after him to return the pills, otherwise he would rob him every time they met. After what had happened, he went to the mayor's house, where he was met by Ye Zichen and her maid. The guy handed her a golden box and said it was her share. The girl was very surprised but took the box, thinking that she was very curious about what was inside. At night, in the secret combat pavilion, Du Xiaofu thought that without the scripture of energy restoration, even blood would not help him ascend to the new realm. Deeply distressed that he could not find the scripture, he began to call out to the old man Bei and ask him where he had put the scroll. The young man shouted that he should not make him search, otherwise he promised to deal with him. At that moment, a very beautiful but unfamiliar woman suddenly appeared before Du Xiaofu. She asked how the young man knew Fu Yibai, but he could only say that he was him. The woman looked intently at the young man and, seeing his confusion, finished the sentence by asking if he was his friend. She was beside herself with rage and asked again if he was friends with Fu Yibai, and from his silence she concluded that he was. At that moment, Du Xiaofu thought to himself that the woman must be very powerful, since she was able to get here without even disturbing the guards. But aloud he only said that he knew Fu Yibai and offered to find him for her. The woman replied that since Fu Yibai was hiding from her, she agreed to take Du Xiaofu with her. The guy didn't even have time to blink, and he barely grabbed the hem of the stranger's dress before they were already flying over the city. As they flew beneath the clouds, the boy thought about how infuriating the situation was, and how old Bai could have angered such a powerful woman. When they arrived at their destination, the woman threw him to the ground. Du Xiaofu wasn't ready for this turn of events, so he fell backwards onto the ground with a thud. Finding himself in a forest near a huge tree, he tried to explain that he had no connection to old man Bai, and that she had grabbed the wrong person. The beautiful woman replied that she would simply kill him first if he was not connected to the old man and was of no use to her. Hearing this, the guy decided that it would be better to say that he was connected to Fu Yibai after all. Then the woman promised to spare his life for now if the guy did not try to escape. But she warned that if the old man came to rescue the guy, she could not guarantee his safety. In the evening, Ye Zichen stood on the balcony and wondered if Du Xiaofu could now really focus on his development. Suddenly, her father, Ye Baolin, the head of Stone City, entered her room to ask if his daughter had gained anything useful from her trip to the Du family. The girl replied that there was nothing special about the younger generation of the Du family compared to other families, except that the young master was not so stupid. Her father replied that the young man was mysterious, and told her that Master Du had done well in the outside world, but had returned to the city with a child 16 years ago. He told the girl that Du Xiaofu had been kidnapped by someone very powerful who could fly and take into the mountains of monsters, and that the boy was probably already dead. He then added that the person who kidnapped the boy had reached the level of spiritual pulse, and that his daughter's marriage to a representative of a powerful family would help their family. Without listening to her father, the girl said she understood and ran to rescue Du Xiaofu, dismissing her father's words that she could get into trouble by going to the mountains now. Running away from home, she rushed to the Du family estate to find out what had happened to Du Xiaofu and where he was. The guards tried to calm her down and not complicate matters, then simply asked her not to hit them and offered to talk. After dealing with the guards, she headed for the cliffs with only one thought in her mind: where was Du Xiaofu now? Meanwhile, the boy, not hoping that old Bai would come to rescue him, escaped from captivity by jumping from tree to tree while his captor was asleep. He decided that the woman would look for him in Stone City, so his only chance of escape was to hide deep in the monster mountains. Suddenly, he felt his whole body engulfed in flames, and in an instant, he was rapidly approaching the ground. As he lay there, a woman approached him and, sympathetically asking if he was tired from running all night, offered to help calm his pulse. While helping the young man with his pulse, she praised him for running to the mountains instead of the city, and added that few people managed to hide from her. Du Xiaofu said he wanted to see if he could escape, and now he would focus on developing his skills, while the woman offered to check if it was safe ahead. The guy understood that he could only survive or escape by becoming stronger, so he decided to improve his wave strike and wave fist techniques. While the guy was training, he felt that the power of the wave strike was changing and moving from level to level. He felt the power of his strength reaching its full potential and power, and by getting rid of his weaknesses, he would make his wave punch faster and more flexible. While he was sitting on the ground practicing his wave punch, a huge snake was watching him from a tree. In the blink of an eye, it began to twist around the branch and turned into a single, continuous stream of energy. Du Xiaofu heard the noise and realized that something strange was happening nearby, so he opened his eyes and began to look around. The guy realized that now he would have to deal with a huge, white thunder snake that was creating the noise that distracted him from his training. Meanwhile, the snake was already flying down toward him from the tree, opening its huge mouth with protruding fangs and sticking out its tongue to attack. However, the guy was already ready to repel its attack, so before it could get too close to him, he put his hand out for a wave strike. He put his left hand forward first, waiting for the right moment, and then struck the approaching snake with a powerful energy wave. Du Xiaofu knew that white thunder snakes were not poisonous, but their bites suppressed a person's inner strength, so if the snake bit him, it would be the end of it. He threw his right hand forward and sent a wave strike at the snake. The wave made several jumps on the ground and to the side of the snake, but did not affect it in any way. He did not expect such disappointment. The power of the wave strike was clearly insufficient, and the guy realized that things were bad, and he needed to do something urgently. Meanwhile, the snake was getting closer, and the guy could already see its open mouth with huge fangs sticking out, and its forked tongue sticking out. The guy watched in awe as the snake moved toward him, thinking about how fast it was. He sent one wave attack after another at the snake, but they did not cause it any noticeable harm, and the huge snake was inexorably approaching the guy. Suddenly, he realized that the power of the wave attack increased from level to level, and if he managed to compress the levels, his power would increase many times over. The guy concentrated and felt his right hand begin to be enveloped by rings of fire mixed with runes, and felt power surge into his hand. By the time the snake approached, the guy compressed the levels of power and managed to throw a 13-fold wave shock right in front of him. The white thunder snake was clearly not prepared for such a counterattack, and the powerful wave strike struck it and threw it to the ground. Du Xiaofu was happy that he had managed to fight such an opponent and win. He rejoiced, even though the battle had exhausted him. He began to understand that by using the technique of compressing his power, he was able to achieve 13 times the power, and his strength had more than doubled. The monster mountains were home to many demonic beasts, and in a few hours, Du Xiaofu encountered many of them, including a scarlet flame hare. The hare had the ability to spit fire from its mouth. He also encountered a crystal wolf that could create crystals. Du Xiaofu also encountered a huge armored beast on his way, and the young man determined that it had almost reached the realm of the universe. Another unusual encounter was meeting 5 thunder snakes at the same time. He thought that even fighting one white thunder snake was exhausting, and now he would have to fight all 5 at once. And then he raised his hand to use the powerful wave strike technique and try to defeat all the snakes at once. Meanwhile, the snakes were getting closer, and the guy could clearly see their open mouths with huge fangs and their long tongues that split at the ends. Du Xiaofu threw his arm forward and put all his strength into the wave strike, hoping to defeat all the snakes at once. The force of the wave strike reached the snakes, and 2 of them were pinned to the tree, arrows sticking out of their heads halfway into the trunk. At the end of one of the arrows sticking out of the snake's head, the boy noticed an amulet made of bones with a blue stone and a tassel at the end. The next moment, the boy saw a girl with a bow in her hand, with arrows sticking out of her quiver, with exactly such amulets at their ends. The girl jumped to the ground not far from him and asked how he dared to come here with his pathetic strength, to which he replied that he was not here of his own free will. Before the boy could recover, the beautiful stranger rushed towards him, drawing her small blade from its sheath. But instead of attacking him, she stood back to back with him, and together they prepared to repel the attack of the remaining snakes. With the help of the blade and a wave attack, they managed to deal with the remaining white thunder snakes. Saying goodbye, the girl told him to leave if he wanted to stay alive, and that he was now in a place inaccessible to people like him. With that, she disappeared in the blink of an eye, and the guy thought with admiration about how fast she was. Then, looking at the tree, he realized that the stranger had stolen the skin, horns, meat, and bones of the demonic animals, which were worth a fortune. Suddenly, the guy heard a rustle in the nearby bushes and thought it was obviously another beast he would have to fight. At that moment, he told himself that he would fight any beast that might appear in his path. A menacing grunt came from the bushes, and 3 huge, fanged, menacing boars jumped out at the guy at the same time. The boars rushing after the guy were enormous. Their fangs were terrifying, sticking out of their mouths and noses. The guy ran away from them along the road, wondering why there were so many animals, and he realized that he would not be able to defeat them alone. Then he screamed at the top of his lungs and called out to the woman who had kidnapped him, urging her to come to his aid. The woman rushed to his aid, trying to understand how the guy had learned combat techniques, and was surprised that she had discovered such talent. A few moments later, the boars were struck by lightning, and only pieces of meat remained of them. The woman praised the boy for his reaction and ability to use combat techniques, but noted that he could have died several times. Hearing strange sounds coming from afar, the woman said that a herd of animals was approaching, and they needed to leave. Without hesitation, she grabbed Du Xiaofu by his cloak and flew away from that place. A second later, hooves pounded on the ground where they had flown from, and a herd of horses appeared. Other animals followed the horses in a stream, and a huge golden bird flew above them, scattering its golden feathers. Towards nightfall, Du Xiaofu and the flying woman found shelter, built a fire, and began to prepare dinner. When the meat was ready, they sat down to eat, and the woman suggested that Old Bai had taught the young man how to roast meat. The young man tore off a piece of meat and began to eat, inviting the woman to join him. She took a piece of meat in her hand and said that looking at it reminded her of a story that had happened to her long ago. Du Xiaofu replied that everything has a beginning and an end, and that he was useless to her, so it was pointless to kidnap him. The woman replied that Old Bai was to blame for kidnapping the guy because he was hiding from her. The young man replied that she was so strong that she could have already caught the old man, and that there was something he did not understand and wanted to ask her about. He said that he saw many people in the stream of animals when they flew away from the forest. Among them were not only those who were fleeing, but also those who were not concerned about their safety at all. And that's what made him think that the stream was not a normal stream of animals at all, and he asked if there could be treasures in these mountains. So they talked over dinner by the fire, not seeing the bloody sword stuck in the ground behind them and the outstretched human hand. The woman praised him for thinking in the right direction and told him about the king of beasts who lived in these mountains. She added that the king of beasts was self-proclaimed and that now was the moment when he had grown very weak. Any demonic beast is a valuable trophy in itself, and here there is also the opportunity to take his place, which is why strong fighters battle here. Whoever wins, no matter who they are, will have a huge influence on these mountains. She then added that she was not interested in participating in these competitions, but if the guy wanted to watch, she did not mind. He thanked her and promised to catch Old Man Bay for her when they returned. In response, the woman asked him to fry some more meat after finding rabbits near the stream. At that moment, an old man and a girl from the Swanfu sect appeared in the forest. They determined from the tracks that someone had been there and had gone into the mountains. The old man said that they should hurry and take advantage of their opportunity, so as not to miss the chance given to them by heaven. Meanwhile, in the clearing, other fighters were battling demonic beasts and awaiting the arrival of other powerful sects. After defeating the beast, the man with the necklace said that he would do everything to ensure that the treasures went to the Swan Ming sect. Representatives of another sect, Tian Shi, fought the wolf using the technique of the swift snake. In response to his student's praise, the master said that he was not yet strong enough, but that he himself could even fight the king of beasts. He then added that they could not allow other sects to steal their opportunity to fight the king of beasts. Du Xiaofu watched these battles and thought that the blood of the king of beasts would be useful to him in building his own foundation. The man with the necklace noticed the young man and asked him who he was and how he got there. The old man from the Swanfu sect said that the young man should hide because he was still a child and not spiritually developed enough. The old man from the Tianshi sect decided that the boy looked extremely suspicious and that they needed to capture and interrogate him. These were representatives of the three great sects of Swan Mingzong, Swan Fu Meng, and Tianshi, and there were rumors that even the lords welcomed the guards of these sects. The boy decided that they had appeared in the depths of the monster mountains to hunt the king of beasts, and the fact that they were all from different sects would help him escape. So he said in a deliberately calm voice that they should continue talking while he went on to look for ingredients for the barbecue. Then the elder of the Tianshi sect said that they had all come here to catch the king of beasts, so why not work together? The representatives of the Swan Fu Meng sect remained silent and did not respond to the old man's proposal. The representatives of the Swan Mingzong sect also remained silent, except for the man with the necklace, who clicked his tongue in dissatisfaction. The elder Tianshi said that the boy was not yet at the level of the first realm, which meant he was with his teacher, and asked his disciple Liu Kun to deal with the boy. Du Xiaofu replied that they were representatives of great sects, but for some reason they were being extremely imprudent. Liu Kun grinned and narrowed his eyes, replying that their power gave them authority. Then, when he rushed towards the boy, silver lightning began to appear around his right hand. Du Xiaofu was ready for the attack and therefore threw his hand forward using the furious wave palm technique. When they collided, Du Xiaofu's open palm and Liu Kun's fist, the latter felt his spiritual energy being destroyed. From the outside, their duel looked like a clash of two opposing elements. Then Liu Kun struck again, and Du Xiaofu crossed his arms over his chest to defend himself. Liu Kun struck again, this time much harder, so that the ground beneath the young man's feet began to crack. Du Xiaofu was shocked by how strong his opponent was, and was annoyed by his advantage. Despite the balance of power, Du Xiaofu declared that he did not consider the young man his opponent, and demanded that he surrender. The sect elder Swan Fu Meng was extremely surprised at how powerfully Du Xiaofu's spiritual energy circulated without reaching the first realm. His grandson became curious about how the young man was able to develop spiritual energy and master natural martial arts. The young man replied that it was the result of his hard work and numerous training sessions. Unexpectedly for everyone, Du Xiaofu used the furious wave palm technique and an explosion rang out. Taking advantage of the surprise effect and the fact that everyone was confused, the guy ran away. However, Liu Kun did not lose his composure and shouting, "You can't escape!" rushed to catch up with the young man. Members of the other sects also rushed after him, hoping to find out who his teacher was. The guy ran, feeling as if needles were piercing his back, and he understood that this was the pressure of the auras of powerful masters. Du Xiaofu ran to the place where the woman was waiting for him, shouting that the sects wanted to take her barbecue. There, Liu Kun caught up with him, wishing the guy would go to hell. Du Xiaofu began to explain that representatives of the three major sects were chasing him. The woman did not react and continued to sit calmly on the log, but a dome appeared above her and the young man, which Liu Kun could not break through. No matter how hard Liu Kun tried to break through the dome under which Du Xiaofu and the woman were, none of his attempts were successful. The woman stood up and, continuing to hold the dome over them, walked towards Du Xiaofu. Liu Kun sat on the ground, discouraged, not understanding who she was, and already counting her among his strongest enemies. Representatives of other sects who had been watching his attempts to break through were glad that he had failed. Du Xiaofu, satisfied that he was safe, lay on the ground far from the woman and repeated that she was incredibly cool. The woman approached him and asked where the barbecue meat was that she had sent him to get. She leaned over him closely, lightning flashing from her eyes, and called him a piece of trash for failing to complete the task. She ordered the guy to go and fight Liu Kun again and brought the flute to her lips. Liu Kun asked if she really thought that he, Du Xiaofu, would be able to defeat him in battle this time. As soon as the first notes of the flute sounded, Du Xiaofu felt his body enveloped in tongues of fiery energy. Everyone nearby, including the young man himself, was greatly confused by what was happening. It turned out that the sounds of this flute held a mysterious power that caused spiritual energy to flow faster and activated the palm of the fierce wave. The melody of the flute activated the spiritual energy concentrated between the heavenly lake and the heavenly gates. The sect elders couldn't believe that such a thing was even possible, since the guy hadn't even reached the first realm yet. The elder of the Tianshi sect demanded that his disciple immediately attack the young man, not giving him time to take all the power activated by the melody of the flute. A representative of another sect warned that the young man's energy could break free and spread for many miles. Lu Kun did not believe until the very last moment that the guy would really activate the palm of the fierce wave. Du Xiaofu successfully accomplished this task, and a fountain of fiery energy burst from his right hand, after which the young man soared upward. Everyone who was present was extremely surprised and shocked by what they had just seen. Liu Kun did not understand how this was even possible. When the young man returned, the woman asked him to remember the sensations he had just experienced. Then she turned to everyone present and asked if there were any other matters they needed to settle. The elder of the Tianshi sect asked her to clarify what she meant. The woman did not have time to answer when suddenly they heard a wild roar and decided that it was the roar of the king of beasts, and that he was obviously being chased by some animal. Suddenly, two huge birds appeared in the sky, one with lilac wings and the other with golden wings. An argument broke out between the sect elders, and it lasted until they saw a group of people in white not far away on a hill. The elders began to ask each other if they had anything to do with the appearance of these people. The elder of the Tianshi sect admitted that they had planned to use the white leopard hunters as a backup plan. The representatives of the other sects were outraged and surprised and could not believe that Tianshi had actually done this. Du Xiaofu thought about how cunning and calculating the Tianshi sect had been, and that they now had a numerical advantage. He looked closely at the white leopard hunters and recognized people who had a bad reputation in the city and who frightened children. The sect's elder, Xuanfu Meng, was extremely angry about the Tianshi sect's alliance with the white leopard hunters. The sect's elder, Xuan Mingzong, suggested that they all unite, including Du Xiaofu and the woman. Du Xiaofu asked what his companion thought about this and what she was going to do. She replied that none of this concerned them and that she would do him a favor by getting him out of there. Then grabbed his cloak and they soared upward. When they rose into the sky above the mountains, they saw two birds, one purple and one golden. They were fighting each other so fiercely that feathers were flying everywhere. The golden bird hit the lilac bird so hard that it screamed. In response, the purple bird opened its beak and directed a powerful stream of purple energy at the golden bird. The golden bird responded with a counterflow of golden fiery rain, and at some point these flows met. Lightning bolts flew in different directions at tremendous speed, striking the rocks and destroying them, and the animals walked and walked through the gorge, and burning lightning bolts fell and fell from above into the gorge. The golden bird circled in the sky, and golden whirlwinds formed around its head and tail. Then it rose high, and from there struck the lilac bird with a huge golden beam of energy swirls. The lilac bird responded with an equally powerful stream of energy, only this time it was purple. The golden bird did not want to yield to its rival and released two powerful streams of golden energy from its wings. In response, the lilac bird directed another powerful stream of lilac-colored energy at the golden bird. There was a powerful explosion, and both birds folded their wings and plunged headfirst toward the ground. Both birds fell to the ground not far from where the woman and Du Xiaofu were watching them, and the woman said that it was a battle to the death. The woman told the young man that the birds' deaths had saved them from additional problems. At that moment, an elderly woman unknown to the young man appeared near them. She came with the girl who had helped Du Xiaofu deal with the snakes. When he saw the girl, the guy shouted that she had stolen his trophies after he had dealt with the snakes. The old woman suggested taking the secret bone for herself and dividing all the other trophies equally. However, Du Xiaofu's companion disagreed and said that she would take everything. This response greatly angered the old woman, and with the words, "How dare you!" she rushed into attack. The woman asked Du Xiaofu not to approach the birds, calling them strange, and to be on the safe side, she covered him with a transparent dome. Meanwhile, the old woman was already approaching her, her hands with long, sharp nails outstretched. But she replied that despite this circumstance, she still had enough strength to fight her. At that moment, a girl with a bow who was with the old woman jumped off a cliff into the gorge. Du Xiaofu shouted at her not to approach the birds because they could still be dangerous. However, the girl did not listen to him and ran purposefully toward the birds. After several attempts, the boy managed to break the ball and, climbing out, ran towards the girl. However, she began shooting her bow, and the arrows hit the ground right in front of his feet. The guy raised his hands and tried to explain to her that he was not going to fight her, and repeated that the birds could be dangerous. At that moment, the golden bird opened its eyes and flew up, ready to attack them. Du Xiaofu grabbed the girl in his arms and used his strength to carry them to the rocks. When he got up, he checked the girl's body and asked if she believed him after everything that had happened. She didn't know what to say, so she just stared at him with wide eyes. Suddenly, they heard the sound of wings, the scraping of claws on rocks, and a loud cry as the purple bird came to its senses. The golden bird was already rushing towards her with its beak open and its eyes flashing wildly. And in a few seconds, they rushed at each other again with such fury that only feathers and tongues of flame flew around. The girl said they needed to run because the secret bones of the birds were about to self-destruct. The women also heard this and realized that they needed to save themselves and rescue Du Xiaofu and the girl. A few seconds later, there was a powerful explosion and a huge wave of energy flew in their direction. Du Xiaofu saw that the girl had fallen, turned around, and stretched out his arms toward the wave. The girl's grandmother managed to fly over, grab her granddaughter, and pull her away from the wave. The guy was left alone to face this fiery energy wave. The power of this wave was so great that the guy couldn't withstand it and fell to his knees. This powerful stream of energy and light did not stop, but the guy continued to stand. At some point, the flow of energy dried up. Everything became calm again, and only two figures remained on the rock. The girl was sure that the guy had died because the self-destruction of the secret bones was very strong. She began to cry, and she cried so bitterly that her tears formed a huge puddle. At that moment, the woman who had kidnapped the guy appeared. She was extremely upset by what had happened and called the guy a fool. Meanwhile, somewhere, a small but very unhappy purple bird woke up. She was beside herself with rage, flapping her wings and screaming loudly that Du Xiaofu had locked her up. The little golden bird came to its senses and began to laugh, to which its rival replied that it looked little better. Looking at herself, the golden bird began to scream, asking what had happened to her body and where her luxurious golden feathers were. So they continued to argue about their appearance, while Du Xiaofu lay unconscious. After some time, the boy gradually began to come to his senses at the bottom of a deep well in the rocks. The birds sensed that the boy would soon come to and began demanding that he let them out. The boy heard voices and, not understanding what was happening or who was nearby, asked who was speaking. The birds replied that they had somehow ended up inside his body and demanded that he let them out, promising to spare his life if he did. Du Xiaofu couldn't believe what he heard and asked again if there were really two birds inside his body. They indignantly replied that they were not birds, but heavenly beasts, and that they had indeed lost their bodies and ended up in his body. The young man said that unfortunately he could not release them because he could not even move, and asked them to help him recover. He then added that he would release the one that helped him recover and get back into better shape. Each of the birds wanted to be freed. Their eyes met, and at that moment, a shock ran through the boy's heart. Then the birds began to heal the guy. The golden bird joined his broken bones and said he was a man with the body of a golden phoenix. Du Xiaofu's whole body ached, and the birds inside discussed whether a human body could withstand the blood of a phoenix. Du Xiaofu writhed in terrible agony as he lay on the ground, and the birds insisted that this was all they could do to help and that now he had to cope on his own. Suddenly, something incredible happened, and a stream of fiery energy gushed up from the gorge. Du Xiaofu soared upward thanks to his huge golden wings and thought that he had overcome the first heavenly realm. And then came the realization that along with the first heavenly realm, he had entered the second natural realm. He climbed out of the gorge when the full moon rose in the sky. He did not find his clothes, but he did find the golden tower and the bone that had been stolen from the pavilion. Not far away on a hillock, he saw three figures and headed towards them to find out who they were and what they were doing there. When the boy came closer, he saw Liu Kun with his servant and a small, fragile girl from whom they were demanding treasure. They began to approach her, saying that they would take care of her and not harm her, but the girl was clearly against it. And when the servant was already very close to the girl, Du Xiaofu rushed at him and kicked him in the head. The girl was shocked by what had happened, and the servant, unable to hold himself back, began to back away and then fell. At that moment, Liu Kun reminded them of his presence by coughing into his fist and told the servant to deal with the guy. Du Xiaofu stood between him and the girl, preventing him from approaching her and hurting her. Liu Kun's servant raised his hand, and everyone saw that he had turned into a little boy. Seeing what had happened to his servant, Liu Kun decided that it would be best for him to leave while he was still in one piece. Du Xiaofu just shouted after him that he was not as strong as he wanted to appear. Then, the rescued girl noticed that the guy was standing in front of her completely naked and called him a pervert and turned away. The guy asked if the girl had any spare clothes for him, and he had to agree to the women's clothes she offered. Then she put her thumb and little finger together and raised her index and middle fingers. After that, she raised her right hand and said some words, after which they soared into the sky and flew away. The girl turned into a purple bird so huge that she could catch and carry away a whole dolphin in her claws. They caught another huge fish, which they roasted over a fire they built right on the seashore. While the boy was eating, the girl asked him if he liked the food they had prepared. Du Xiaofu replied that the food was fine and asked why he had eaten so much but still did not feel full. Then the golden phoenix inside him explained that all the food he eats is transformed into energy, which is needed for the development of the phoenix's body. The purple phoenix became angry that his companion was helping the boy and began to shout that he had deceived them and did not know how to free the phoenixes. When Du Xiaofu had eaten his fill, he asked what technique the girl had used to make them fly away. The girl replied that it was a spell, and then they heard a rustling in the bushes. The guy asked who was there, and a second later he grabbed a bone, jumped toward the bushes, and threw the bone. Approaching the tree, they found a small animal in front of which a discarded bone was sticking out of the ground. The phoenixes inside the guy said that it was a demon tiger cub, and that it should be eaten, and Du Xiaofu jumped towards the little tiger. However, the girl stopped him in mid-flight with a spell and said that they couldn't eat this kitten because it was very cute. She offered the kitten a few pieces of meat, said her name was Zhu Shui, and asked what his name was. It could only meow in response, so the girl decided that would be its name. She remembered that when she was little, she had a kitten just like this one that she loved to play with. The girl told Du Xiaofu about her first teacher, who discovered her talent for spells and brought her to the Zhuanfu sect. Zhu also told him that she was very timid and not very strong in battle, but despite this, her sect teacher always supported her. During one of the battles, the teacher used a spell to send her and the senior student away, and to this day, they do not know what happened to the teacher. As she told him all this, the girl was very upset and kept repeating that if she had been stronger, she could have changed something. Du Xiaofu asked her if she knew about the Stone City, which is located on the other side of the Monster Mountains. He told her that their city was protected by a benevolent demonic lion, making it inaccessible to wild beasts. He remembered how, as a child, he had decided to watch the lion fight, and it was then that he was struck by lightning and surrounded by hungry demonic beasts. His mother came to his aid while he was lying on the ground, and it was then that he realized for the first time how weak he was. Du Xiaofu told him what he had heard about the law of this world, that the weak perish and only the strong survive. He said he didn't want to live his life hiding like an ant and being a loser, and raising his open palm to the sky, he suggested that they become stronger together. The girl looked at the boy, then held out her palms, on which lay a purple phoenix feather, and said that it would suit him better. The purple phoenix inside the guy cried out that the feather would help him create a new body because it was capable of holding his soul. The girl was happy to help, so she moved closer to the guy with her palms outstretched. She placed the feather on the guy's palms, and he kept them open while the feather flew up. The guy asked the phoenix not to attack people and to protect the girl. When the feather flew into the air, everything around turned purple, and it felt like stars were falling from the sky. A few moments later, a huge, shining silver ball appeared in the sky and slowly descended to the ground. And then, in the girl's palms, there was a small, purple chick. The guys couldn't believe that this was the purple demonic phoenix. The chick, in turn, sat very dissatisfied, raising its beak and looking around indignantly. The girl was very frightened, and Du Xiaofu hurried to reassure her that the bird had lost its demonic power and could be his messenger. Following the young man's words, the phoenix flew up, circled a few times, and then landed on the girl's right shoulder. Du Xiaofu laughed as he watched this, and said that the bird seemed to like the girl and could use her as its messenger. The resurrected phoenix only snorted when it heard these words, and then a bird flew to the girl with a message from her older brother. After the girl read the message from her older brother, she and Du Xiaofu went to her home, with the kitten riding on the guy's head. Her older brother met the boy and girl at the edge of the forest, and he was clearly in a bad mood. The girl wanted to tell him everything that had happened to her, but he grabbed her by the hand and pulled her behind him. Looking at Du Xiaofu, the guy asked his sister who the young lady she had brought with her was. Du Xiaofu was upset that he was mistaken for a girl, but Zhu Hui explained to her brother who he was, and that the guy had saved her life. He grinned in response and said that he could not even imagine that the guy could have such an unusual hobby. Then Du Xiaofu rushed towards him, grabbed him by the clothes with both hands, and demanded that he repeat what he had said. He replied that the guy liked to dress like a girl and asked if he also had breasts. Jusyuk had been trying to calm them down the whole time and asked them to stop arguing, but they didn't hear her. So she screamed loudly for them to stop. The boys were surprised by her scream, but they did not stop fighting, and the kitten even jumped on the head of the girl's older brother. The girl, frightened by her own voice, suddenly began to cry bitterly, and her brother rushed to calm her down, saying that it was all his fault. Du Xiaofu and the cat, who had returned to his head, thought it would be better to get out of it. They left and came across a tree with red apples hanging from it, and the golden phoenix kept saying that the guy should have taken men's clothes. Climbing up the tree, the guy noticed people below and heard them talking about helping Mr. Liu search for the bloody Lingji mushroom. The guy recognized them as white leopard hunters, and they were talking about how they had to deal with the remaining disciples of Xuanfu. The boy was just about to enjoy the apples he had picked when he heard that they were going to deal with him too. He took a bite of one of the apples, but it turned out to be very sour, so he threw the apples down one by one. Then, dressed in women's clothing, he jumped out of the tree and ran straight towards the white leopard warriors. It was a complete surprise for them to encounter the boy so quickly and in such a form. He smiled and asked if he had heard them say that they wanted to deal with him. A few minutes later, the white leopard hunters were lying on the ground, their leader left without clothes because Du Xiaofu had taken them for himself. He picked up an apple from the ground and, about to take a bite, asked if they had been talking about the bloody Lingji mushroom and if they knew whether it was tasty. On the way home, the older brother asked Zhu Shui about the strange bird sitting on her shoulder and why he had not seen it before. The girl replied that the bird would now be her new messenger and asked why her brother had sent Du Xiaofu away. The boy asked if she knew that the blood mushroom Lindsay grew nearby, and the girl realized that her brother did not want her new friend to know about the mushroom. He explained that the mushroom was an important ingredient for strengthening the foundation, which was why he didn't want to tell a stranger about it. Suddenly, completely unexpectedly for the girl, another guy appeared and introduced himself as Lin Boguang from Xuanming. The girl's brother asked the guy where his friend had gone, and he replied that he had probably already died because he had left him to fight alone. The girl asked in horror how he could abandon his friend, but her brother told her not to interfere. The guy replied that they had also abandoned their teacher, and that there was nothing wrong with running away if there was no way to defeat the enemy. While they were talking, Liu Kun quietly approached them and said that they all needed to get out of there as soon as possible. His appearance was so unexpected for everyone that they could only turn around and look at him in surprise. Liu Kun grinned and said that he had been following them, and thanks to their complete stupidity, he had been able to find the place where the blood mushroom grew. The guy was leaning on a sword, and the girl recognized the sword and asked him where he got their teacher's sword. Then Liu Kun told them what had happened and how he had come to possess the sword. He told them about the battle that took place between his teacher and the teacher of the boy and girl, the head of the Xuanfu men sect. During the battle, the sect leader, Xuanfu Meng, struck Liu Kun's teacher with his sword. The latter grabbed his opponent by the arms and, holding him, shouted to the young man that now was the time to attack him. Liu Kun watched their battle and was ready to defend his teacher at any moment, holding his teacher's huge wooden cane in his hands. He approached the sect leader Xuanfu Meng from behind and stabbed him in the back with all his might. The teacher praised his student, but he did not stop there. Leaning his whole body on the cane, he pierced his teacher's body and said only, "Goodbye." Now, as he told this story, he laughed loudly and said that as a result of the fight between two dogs, a third dog took the bone. Brother Juzhui was angry and indignant. He shouted that the boy had betrayed his teacher, and how could he do such a thing? After his words, Liu Kun stopped smiling. Anger appeared in his eyes, and he replied that they would not be righteous for long either. Liu Kun and the girl's brother were already preparing to fight. Liu Kun raised his sword to strike, and the boy rushed towards him. Suddenly, to everyone's surprise, Du Xiaofu appeared. He called out to them and said that he had come to eat mushrooms but had encountered them instead. They were all standing near the suspension bridge that led to the cave where the mushroom grew. Liu Kun said discontentedly that he had gotten in his way again. The ripe blood mushroom, Lindsay, glowed so brightly that its radiance could be seen from afar. Du Xiaofu happily said that this was the very mushroom that the people from the White Leopard and Phoenix group had talked about and shouted that they needed to get it. Liu Kun, Zhu Shui, and her older brother were surprised and extremely discouraged by the sudden appearance of the boy and just stood there staring at him. Du Xiaofu commanded the little tiger to rush forward, and it jumped down and ran with the young man rushing after it. The boys stood closer to the bridge and were ready to engage him in battle when he suddenly sped up and jumped. Flying over them, he landed on the bridge, and they only had time to watch him go. Lu Kun said that the boy had asked for it. Then he struck the ground with his cane and cast a poisonous fang spell. Immediately, a huge black and fiery dragon appeared on the bridge behind Du Xiaofu. Next, Zhuxue clenched her fingers into a fist, then raised her index and middle fingers, uttered a spell, and a purple bird appeared over the bridge. The girl commanded it to deal with everyone, and the bird rushed to peck at the dragon. The girl shouted at Liu Kun that she would never forgive him, but he only smirked and snorted in response. While they were fighting, Du Xiaofu made his way across the suspension bridge and soon found himself near the cave, rejoicing that he would be the first to go for the mushroom. However, the girl's brother could not allow a stranger to be the first to reach the mushroom that everyone wanted so much, and he cast a spell on the soul-driven swords. Du Xiaofu turned back to the bridge and saw that the swords were flying and breaking the boards from which it was made. The bridge began to sway from side to side, and the young man had to grab the rope to keep himself on it. Lu Kun saw that the girl's older brother was also running towards the bridge and was about to step onto it. He grabbed his staff and struck the ground with it in a rage, and suddenly the planks where the bridge was attached to the rocks began to fly apart. This happened just as Zhu Shui's older brother jumped onto the bridge, and the bridge planks and part of the rock collapsed beneath him. Losing his footing, the boy fell rapidly into the abyss. Zhu Shui screamed and fell to her knees. She folded her fingers, uttered a spell, and suddenly the purple bird reappeared and rescued her older brother, placing him on its back. When her brother was saved and the bird returned him to the ground, the girl told Liu Kun that she would take revenge on him for her teacher, but he just smirked again. When the bridge collapsed on one side and part of it fell into the abyss, Du Xiaofu managed to grab one of the crossbars and hang on to it. After catching his breath and regaining his composure, he crawled up the ladder, and the phoenix inside his body encouraged him, saying that when the boy ate a mushroom, his strength would increase by 1/3. So step by step, overcoming the hanging ladder, the boy finally reached the top where the cave was located. He immediately noticed the glowing blood mushroom. It was impossible to miss, as its glow illuminated everything around it. A small kitten had been sitting on the boy's shoulder the whole way, but when it saw the mushroom, it rushed towards it. As soon as it reached it, it immediately started to gnaw on it. Du Xiaofu shouted that it was his mushroom, but the kitten had already taken a bite. The guy hit the animal so hard that it got a bump on its forehead, then took the mushroom and asked if the kitten was going to eat it all by itself. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise from above and the rustling of wings. Looking up, they saw a huge bird with the body of a dragon. A few moments later, the bird began to descend, and the boy noticed a fair-haired girl riding on its back. Without waiting for the bird to land, the girl jumped off, causing the ground to shake and crack. Du Xiaofu also couldn't stay on his feet and fell to the ground, watching as the girl got up and walked towards him. He was holding a small animal and a mushroom in his hands, and felt an incredible tremor, realizing that he was completely unable to move. The girl approached him, leaned over, looked him in the eyes, and told him to give her the bloody mushroom, her pupils bright red. Du Xiaofu was not going to give up, despite the protests of the Golden Phoenix, who said that the girl was at a much higher level of combat pulse. He replied to the Phoenix that he would not even consider obeying it and caught the girl's uncomprehending gaze. Then he suddenly put the mushroom in his mouth, chewed it completely, and swallowed it in front of the astonished girl. She became terribly angry, called him a vile, disgusting person, and rushed at him. The guy grinned and took a few steps back, then pushed off and flew into the abyss. By the time she reached the edge of the precipice, Du Xiaofu was nowhere to be seen. Her face reflected a whole range of emotions: anger, incomprehension at how the guy had managed to trick her, and a tremendous desire to find him and take revenge. Meanwhile, Du Xiaofu was flying into the abyss and felt his whole body burning with fire. As the guy fell head first, the Phoenix told him that he shouldn't have eaten the unpurified blood mushroom unless he wanted to explode. Du Xiaofu replied that he needed other help, and the Phoenix advised him to purify the golden feather with his own flesh and blood. The guy said he didn't understand the metaphor, and then the bird replied that he needed to direct his strength and energy at the rocks. Then the guy began to shuffle his feet, as if walking on rocks, while his whole body continued to burn with fire. At the same time, he uttered the spell to cleanse the golden feather and fell onto the rock. Where he fell, a depression formed in the rocks beneath him, but the fire that engulfed the boy's body did not go away. The guy asked the phoenix about the effect of the mushroom, and the bird replied that human methods would turn it into spiritual energy, and that he needed to use the method of the golden birds, designed for external impact, and divide the medicinal effect in order to absorb it.